Welcome to SpanReads, not your typical rereads podcast, a 17th Shard series where we reread Brandon Sanderson's works and are giant nerds about it. Today we'll be talking about Starsight. Join me is Jessie.
Hello, I'm Lady Lameness.
Ian.
Hey, I'm your editor.
Eric.
Hey, I'm Chaos.
And I'm Mish, or firstRainbowRose. Just like before, we will be doing full spoilers for these during these episodes. As such, this is our warning to viewers and listeners that there will be full spoilers for all Skyward novels except Defiant and the Skyward Flight novellas from this point forward. So, characters. Who do we want to start with?
Oh, man. I feel
Let's start with Spensa.
Let's start with Spensa.
She's the main character.
The main character. I thought Spensa's arc was quite good in this book. Of her needing to realize that, like, these are people... like that really connected with the stuff with the Delvers. I felt Spensa hearing, oh, they're all insects and kind of being horrified by that was very interesting. I think it's at the end where Spensa's like, oh, but I sent the Delver to Starsight. Like, they're the enemy. But then she's like, but like, they're people too. Like, they're not, that's not great.
Yeah.
That was all very interesting to me. So I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's like the growth of her, like, checking her prejudices. The realization that, oh, Kuna's smile, like, isn't condescending, predatory. It's just like, no, Kuna just, like, that's not a Dione thing. Kuna is just trying to connect with you, and they're bad at it.
Yeah, I always love that moment.
The realization that Kuna is entirely genuine throughout the book is like, oh... And also Mrs. Chamwet, realizing, like,
yes,
Mrs. Chamwet is not a spy. She's just a very nice lady that's cleaning your house.
It was so sad. It's like, oh, are you not pleased with my cleaning? I was like, no.
And it's like, it's so easy to, like, spin that away. It's like, oh no, like, I want to experiment with technology, like, not like I'm replacing you. Like,
or like the admitting defeat by having, if you're extra hungry, here's this little dessert. And Spensa's like, it was the most delicious defeat I'd ever experienced.
That's very funny.
It's like, I want Mrs. Chamwet to come back.
Yeah,
I want that conversation of like, oh yeah, you were like housemaid to a human. Oh, it's chill.
The Delver can kill a lot of people on Starsight, but not Mrs. Chamwet here. Okay,
he's the one person who died.
No,
Don't say that. She is like S tier character. Like, if we were to do a tier list.
In my live blog of Starsight Thoughts to Jess, I was like, Mrs. Chamwet, sob emoji. It's like, oh no, not Mrs.
And then
Chamwet.
he physically came through to the bedroom and was like, Mrs. Chamwet.
That was later. But yeah, I did do that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but like, you still did that.
I did do that.
This is a very good book at the whole idea of questioning your biases and your prejudices against people based on what you do or don't know about them. And yeah, Spensa really has to adjust her way of thinking in this. And there's some really interesting kind of philosophies that you can pull out of this, from the fact that, like, she comes from such a, like, militaristic, jigonistic society. And, like, the whole thing at the end where her training, her growing up, makes sense that she's like, I have to save detritus, I have to save my friends, I'll send the Delver somewhere else. But then everything else that she's learned has also been brought in, and now there's that tug of war of, how do I balance this? Because there's more to it than just good guys and bad guys, and, like, she can't see it that way anymore. And, like, that is such a fascinating thing to kind of pull out and look at with her character. And, like, it continues into Cytonic as well, right? Like, she had a whole breakdown because she doesn't know how to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
Which was very interesting because she had a very similar breakdown in Skyward, I noticed, that she does in Cytonic, because she doesn't know how to balance the idea of, like, military life with not killing people. and like people not dying. She doesn't want her friends to die. She wants to be able to fly without her friends dying. It's just very fascinating watching her grow up, because that's what she's doing. She's 16, 17, and having to grow up and realize what it's like to be an adult and what life is actually like when you take down those walls and those prejudices that you have from the people around you.
I thought we learned that she's 18 now in this book before Spensa and Jorgen kissed. Am I making that up?
She's a teenager.
She's a teenager, yeah.
That's basically it.
Yeah, late teens. But yeah, I thought that was like one of the highlights of the book, really, of like Spensa's arc there. Like, I thought that was very good.
The one thing about Spensa's arc that kind of confused me was the story about the shadow. I never understood. And I never quite understood what she was going for with, like, she was thinking she was the shadow. And I think it's because I just didn't understand the story to begin with. But that's kind of the bit of her character arc that I'm like, I'm just going to skip over this.
See, I like the shadow story purely for vibes. What it means, I don't really know either. It just is a cool story.
It's one of those, like, I think Brandon's trying to do some philosophical stuff, and I'm just like, what though? Like, it feels like something a little like that.
Like, yeah, I think it like may like tie in sort of with the Delvers, maybe.
Yeah,
like, because like there is that like the Delver like presenting itself as like Spence's shadow or reflection dynamic, but like it's not explained very well.
Yeah.
My first thought whenever I read it is this Peter Pan? Oh wait, no, this isn't Peter Pan. Because it's a guy with a shadow, and if you look at it through like twisted time and how like Genghis Khan and all the rest of the stories get twisted. And
the thing that I did like with Spensa talking about the stories the Gran told her was how she was so fixated on the idea of like what happened after the story, and how like the hero wasn't allowed to go home and like became some sort of a loner compared to the community they were once in. And just like the foreshadowing of her having the choice of, do I go back to Detritus or do I go to the nowhere and try and figure out what's going on there? And I think that was foreshadowed well. I can understand why she was so worried and fixated on that when she thinks that she's basically the hero in this case. And it's like, what if at the end of all this, I'm just as isolated as I was at the beginning? And I can really see her being so worried about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It amuses me that like when they're forming the flight for the first time, and it's like Spensa is all like, oh, we all need call signs. And the call sign she gives herself is Spring, which is like a reference to like her name, SP, Spin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, you're breaking cover there a little bit of like, it's call signs are supposed to like first letter of your name. Your name's Alanik right now. You're breaking cover.
I love how everyone was, Braid was like, call signs aren't required. And then just everyone's just like, yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Drops them immediately.
Yep. Mm-hmm. She tried. We kind of talked about Mbot in the last episode, and at least his ending.
I have a comment for Mbot.
Let's talk about Mbot.
It's towards the beginning of the book, and it's just such beautiful foreshadowing to what ends up happening with Mbot in Cytonic, which is, that's easy for you to say, Mbot replied. You've lived your whole life with autonomy. For me, it's a new hazardous thing, a weapon I've been handed with no instructions. I might be on my way to becoming something terrible, something I don't understand and cannot anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
There is some planning in this series here, and that's definitely one of those for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think that Brandon knew what he wanted to do with Mbot and with how Mbot was related to AIs and what would happen going forward. Because there's the whole conversation that Mbot has with Spensa of, well, I mean, you like me, but what if there was 2 of me? What if there was 100? What if there was 1,000 Mbots? That's basically what the Delvers are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, hey, there's an AI that suddenly just copied themselves over and over and over again. And again, it's just more foreshadowing for what we learn in the future. But I think that Mbot is legitimately also worried about that. Like, that is something that he doesn't want to happen in the future. And it's fascinating having a character who is sapient, but also who doesn't want a lot of the autonomy that comes with sapience because he doesn't know how to deal with it. He wasn't built for that.
He was never a child. Like, children kind of like come into terms with their sapience, like in becoming like a functional human being or other alien races, presumably. Like that doesn't happen. Like, it doesn't. Mbot is just Mbot, and like suddenly he's alive. There's no like transition period for him.
You could argue this is his transition period.
Yeah. Like, and this is kind of his childhood. And he doesn't have any oversight either. Like, there's no parental figure there who can help him through it. And Spensa just treats him like basically like a friend that's her own age, almost.
Yeah.
Who already has it figured out.
Humans don't have to figure it out. Like, it's a subconscious thing.
To follow on from what Ian was saying, like, I think like Mbot doesn't have that instinctual subconscious drive of this is how you kind of develop and become a person, and he has to actually do it himself. And in a way, this actually just jumped to my mind that it's sort of like people who have to deal with neuroatypical developmental issues. They don't have that subconscious innate drive that like neurotypical people do. And it's harder for them because they have to try and understand society in a way that everyone else just gets it.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That's really frustrating. And I think that's what Mbot's trying to do and go through, is he's trying to understand how to be alive without having anything internal that's just like, oh yeah, you do it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which leads to some of his very humorous things where he gets it completely wrong, and you're just like, oh, Mbot.
Mbot is very funny, as always.
Yes. People say that Brandon doesn't write humor. I think that Mbot is my favorite of Brandon's humor.
I can believe that. He's really his humor's
really
solid.
Good humor.
Yeah.
Pivoting from Mbot to the Starsight crew.
Yeah, we lose one crew of characters, and then we get a whole new set of people that we're interacting with, and then we do that again in Cytonic. Very fun.
Remember when there was the joke of Delva Flight School, and then we got frickin' Pirate Flight School instead? Like, look, it actually just happened anyway?
There's still one more book, Jess. There's still one more book.
We have to have another flight school, otherwise Defiant only works if there's a flight school in it.
Has to be of Delvers.
Defiant will be all the flight schools finally coming together, and we'll have a great big party.
Yeah, a giant flight school.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's part of why Cytonic worked for me, is because like, oh yeah, like, okay, now here's the flight school for the book. Like, it just followed out as completely natural at that point.
Okay. See, I'm not saying that in a positive way. I think it's getting contrived. That said, though, I really like a lot of the Starsight characters. Like Mortimer, very interesting. I like that whole process, and that's just such a good example of like these aliens don't think like humans, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a different thing. And but also Mortimer's like, no, I want to be alive. I absolutely want to be alive, and like that was fascinating. And I wish we could see more of them in the future. That'd be
Too bad they're a baby.
They're a baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now. Though we don't even know if they're like a little baby or if they're like the same size.
I thought there was a little baby.
Born
we did see
color.
Picture of like their like left and right planet holding a small purple baby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That conversation between Spensa and Mortimer about the Diome process of birth was so fascinating, because I think it's another example in this book of Brandon trying to challenge the idea of this is how we think and this is the correct way of thinking. And instead he's putting in, well, no, there's other ways you can think, and that doesn't mean that that way is wrong. And it's just such a interesting point that he picked on, because it does come across almost as like, not like euthanasia, or not euthanasia.
Designer babies.
Yeah, like it comes across like designer babies and eugenics. But at the same time, from an alien species, if they just see it differently, like Spensa as a human, really say that they're wrong in the way that they have their culture. And I think a lot of this book is just really a challenge against saying that one culture is better than another, I think, and like trying to challenge those beliefs and biases that people have against other people.
Yeah. But like, I also like that, like, there is like that challenging of biases. Brandon doesn't present it as like, and oh yeah, like this is like totally fine. Like it's because like it's people. Like it's not like there's always some issues with everything, with the whole like self-selecting for like a peaceful and non-violent person. That like that's like the flaw in that process of like it kind of like ends up self-selecting for a certain kind of person.
Yeah.
And that's very fascinating. But also, like, I love Mortimer being like, I mean, don't you want your children to be successful? Like, I mean, it's a very interesting, crunchy thing. And I really like that about it.
Yeah. And it's also kind of surprising that, again, like, this is a YA book. Like, it's not something I would sort of expect to be in a YA book. It's more something I would expect to be in a more adult book, that he's exploring these crunchier themes that don't have a simple answer, but yet he's put it into something that is YA, which is kind of good in a way. Like, people should be thinking about these things to some degree. Like, just because people are younger doesn't mean that they're not thinking about them.
If anything, it's easier for a younger person to think about that because they're not so set in their ways of thinking, and they're to be challenged while you're still exploring the world is a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's the entire book. Spensa is challenged by seeing the world.
Yeah.
You are now outside your bubble.
Moving on to the next of the Starsight crew, who personally is my favorite, is Vapor, who is so interesting. I really want to know more about Figments, and just I loved how much Vapor was clearly mysterious in some way, and Spensa was suspicious of her in some way. And then Vapor just turned out to be a spy, and it made so much sense. Because of course she would be.
Yeah, like Vapor as a character is like also very intelligent and also like kind of nice as well. Maybe that's not the right word, but like
she's kind.
Which is just interesting traits to have, which I think Brandon likes to do the thing where like, okay, the character from this species is not like other people in that species, right? And I think with Figments, right, probably most normal people are scared of Figments because I can't see them and they're spooky and they can control my ship, and I don't like that, which is fair. So it's nice to have Vapor being like, you know, I'm nice. I'm floating.
I can absolutely destroy you, but I'm nice.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the line of, have I told anybody what you are? And just, it's a bomb drop, but it illustrates the character so well of this character is not out to get you.
Yeah.
And I love that Vapor, like, she knew that Spensa was human, but was just completely wrong in the context of what was going on.
I loved that.
Yeah.
Well, like, first she thought like she had human ancestry.
Yep.
Then it's like, then the reveal, like, no, she's just a human. Okay, like humans are still around on Redon. And so it's like, she's intelligent, but like, she is still working off of limited information.
Yeah.
And I love when smart characters are making totally rational decisions. It's like, that absolutely makes sense that Vapor would think all that. You would not guess, oh yeah, a person from Detritus was a Cytonic and teleported over here. Like, why would I think that? That's insane.
And I love her line, like, during the battle at the end where she finds Spensa. She's like, oh, so you're a human from this planet. Yeah. It's like she's finally figured it out.
Yeah.
Vapor is my fave. Love Vapor.
I really want to see more of Vapor.
Yeah, I do too. My
Vapor.
And just Figments in general, like, they're so interesting.
How do figments work? Like, they're just a cloud of particulates that can exist in vacuum and not be ripped apart.
You know,
and also interface with technology somehow.
Yeah, like they can take over technology and they come across almost like they're an AI, but Vapor got very offended when someone said that.
Yeah.
It's like, I do wonder if they're somehow connected to like that ancient Delver-like entity.
True. Let's hold this thought for the lore episode, because I think we can talk about figments for a bit.
I mean, that's my thought. So,
I have some thoughts.
I can talk more about figments.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
I think my favorite of the Starsight crew is Hesho and the Kitson. They're
really cute.
Yeah.
I just love... I love him. Like, we're totally a democracy, and all the other Kitson are like, but we always voted against you.
Yeah,
isn't that like they're just trying so hard?
Yeah,
I like that.
Or it's like his line about how it's like so difficult living in a democracy and not a shadow dictatorship. Dude, you're not being subtle right now. Everyone knows what's happening.
Everyone knows.
That's why everybody just keeps calling you Emperor. I'm not the Emperor. I don't know what you're talking about.
People aren't feeding me and fanning me. It's no.
This is completely natural. I deserve this.
I do like at the end, though, where the crew does kind of stand up to him when he doesn't want to work with Spensa, knowing that she's human. And she doesn't know what to do. And they're just like, what if you asked us? And they're like, no, we're going to work with Spensa. It's like, okay.
That was such a good small character moment. I really liked that. Hesha was better in this book than Cytonic. Gotta be honest.
I mean, in his defense, Hesho knows who he is in this book.
That's true.
I think I just don't like amnesia things, maybe.
Yeah, amnesia plots are always bad.
Yeah. There's some good amnesia plots. Like Project Hail Mary is pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
Most amnesia plots are
bad.
I don't think Brandon does them very well. They're not his strong suit.
To be fair, I would love to see him do an entire book that's dedicated to the amnesia plot instead of just being an aspect of it.
You mean like Frugal Wizard?
Isn't that basically Frugal Wizard?
That's basically Frugal Wizard.
I haven't read Frugal Wizard.
People didn't like it.
I think that's just Frugal Wizard.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I love Hesho. They're great.
I was really sad when Hesho died, and then really mad in Cytonic when he wasn't dead. Because like the way it's presented is like they literally say Hesho is dead, and I just don't like the implication of, well, we're gonna use we didn't see the body, so therefore he's not dead, when they specifically say Hesho is dead. I didn't like that, but I was really upset because I did really like Hesho.
Yeah, because like they show like the hole in the ship,
and it's like blackened. So I was like, did the nowhere portal like rip it open? Maybe.
Yeah. So it's just like it's not clear. It's not Hesho was ejected into space and is now dead. For all we know, they're looking at his dead body.
Yeah.
And saying like, nope, he's right there. He's dead.
Like you could just have phrased it as we lost Hesho.
Hesho is gone.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
And then at least there's a little bit more ambiguity other than like, yeah, I mean, his corpse is right here, which like, there's a different implication.
And I think that, at least to me, Hesho kind of stood out a little bit of all the ones in the crew as like, this is the major character that Spensa is interacting with. Like, she's still having major moments with Moriyuma and Braid and Vapor, but out of all of them, this is, for me, I would say, like, this is the version of Kimmelin from the first book.
Yeah.
And that kind of made it worse when he died, because it's like, oh, we got to know him more. Like, he was a closer friend to Spensa than some of the other characters, and we got more interactions. So it hit more when he died. I got to take him back.
I don't think
I'm
Brandon planned
not
that.
bitter.
No, not at all.
There's also like an interesting like narrative thing that ends with like Hesho of like Spensa revealing herself, like, because she reveals herself as human 3 times.
Yep.
Like the first time with Kuna, which is successful, the second time with Braid, which fails utterly, and the third time with Hesho. And it's like, which way is this gonna go? And it ends up ending well.
Yeah. I did like that moment in the Battle of Detritus.
Yeah.
There. That was good.
I did not like Braid.
Yeah, let's talk about Braid, because Braid is...
Braid's interesting.
Braid's a controversial character, I think, because...
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, she's brainwashed in her entire life into thinking that the only thing that she can be is this like aggressive and angry person. But at the same time, I don't like her.
I mean, I don't think you're supposed to like her.
See, I like Braid as a character because like she is very much like Spensa having to deal with someone very similar to her.
Yeah.
But also like showing like the dark side of a character like that, knowing like what goes on like in Cytonic and stuff. Like, I don't think Braid is brainwashed. I just think she's bad.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
She's raised her entire life with this propaganda of humans are aggressive. Humans are likely to lash out at a moment's notice without any warning. She's like raised around that being drilled into her. So to an extent, I think she is brainwashed.
We see less of the act. She's definitely putting on a face for Alanique and like to the whole flight, really. I think like I do think she's playing up that human like, oh yeah, I'm aggressive.
Yeah.
I'm dangerous.
Whereas in like at the end of this book, when she realized like when Spensa like gets like the final read on her, is like, oh no, like she's just willingly going along with Winzik. It's like,
yeah,
she's just a bloodthirsty person.
Yeah.
Which like is playing into like the tropes of, or like the beliefs about humans.
Yep.
But she's just a bad person.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Definitely from the end of this book and the interludes that we get in Cytonic, like I would agree with Ian that I think Braid is just not a good person. And for most of Starsight, like she's putting on an act to be like the stereotypical human, but underneath it, yes, she's going through this society where she's been told that she needs to be aggressive, she's angry and all that. And I do think there is like legitimate anger there in like what happened to her parents and how she grew up. But I think she's just a bad person as well. There were some scenes where, and I think this might be because of how Spensa was seeing it and like Spensa's perspective, where it came across like Braid was more uncertain about the path she was going down. And I was talking to Eric about this, and he said some really interesting things about how Braid acted towards Alanique versus how Braid acted towards Spensa at the end when she actually knew who she was. And then it made a little bit more sense to me that, okay, I think Braid is just putting on this act of being uncertain as well, because she thinks that's what's going to pull Alanique in. And it's only after she finds out that Alanique is actually a human called Spensa that it's like, oh, okay, I don't need to act like that anymore. I'm just going to be upfront with you and like try and join forces because we're both humans and let's just destroy things.
That's what we're good for.
Yeah,
that's what you're good for.
I think she's a good person at all.
No.
I think she's a very interesting person. And I agree with Ian that like having a character that Spensa has to deal with, who is basically Spensa 2.0 for a while, and suddenly Spensa's seeing what other people dealt with in Skyward, that was really interesting. So I do have a complaint, though. I have so many complaints about this. I'm so sorry, guys. This is such a stupid thing, but why is everyone so short in this series?
You explain.
Like Spensa is like 5 foot, or like maybe slightly less than 5 foot. I can't remember. She's very short. As someone who's 5'2", she's shorter than me. Alanique is the same size as Spensa. That's why Spensa's able to pretend to be Alanique, because the hologram works because they're the same size. Braid is only a few centimeters taller than Spensa. Why are all the female humans so small? I don't get it. That is not normal.
That's fair. I didn't think about that, but
it's so all of the people like who Spensa is supposed to empathize with are all the same height as her, and all of the other people are super tall and lord over her. Because like Kuna's super tall.
Kuna's so tall.
Yeah.
Jorgen's so tall. Ned is so freaking tall.
I can't say I knew Spensa was short, and I knew Alanique, like, yeah. Alanique is the same size as Spensa, so we can get this plot to work. Okay, fine, whatever. But to Braid being small, it's like, what? Really?
It's because she's dark Spensa. She has to.
Yeah, she has to. Yeah,
she's Spensa clone.
We have to have Alanique be the same size so we can get this to work, and then we need evil Spensa, and that's Braid. Yeah. Easy.
And like, there's an actual quote that's just like, Braid's a few centimeters taller than Spensa. And like, if it was a few inches, that would be different. But a few centimeters is like 2-3 centimeters, which is like, tall, baby.
Yeah.
Like, freaking nothing.
It's for the Cytoverse fighting game where Spensa and Braid are just alters of each other. They're using the same model.
True. Yes, exactly. But yeah, Braid's an interesting character. But you know what characters we don't see? We don't see Skyward Flight. They're there for sure. And Sadie's a person.
In part 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. T-Stall and Catnip.
Yeah, they're there too. They're present.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I'm definitely glad that we get the Skyward Flight books, because you don't get nearly enough of them in this book. They're just kind of there and then not.
Because Kimmelin's so great, and Kimmelin and Spensa were so great that it's like, I need Spensa Kimmelin, which you don't even get.
There was Kimmelin Jorgen banter in this book. And we only got it once, and we needed more of it because it was so good.
Yeah.
Rip. Okay, we talked about Skyward Flight. No.
I mean, we also got Jorgen baking bread.
That is, I loved Jorgen baking bread. And Grand's all like, Spensa used to always cheat. You don't cheat.
Shocking.
He's Jorgen.
Yeah, it's funny because like Becca Gran is a very similar person to Spensa. Like they vibe with each other very much. So like there is a little like, so I think like she very much enjoyed like Spensa's like rebelling against her instructions. Dude, you're just too boring for me.
You need to get some sticks out of your butt, please. Like let's like ease it up. But I loved that Gran like told different stories. It's like, oh well, I mean those are Spensa stories. They're not for you. I have different stories for you, which I loved that.
I love the story she told.
Yeah, which is a true story.
Very, very important story. Yeah, no, I know. Very important story.
Yeah.
I love the fact that Jorgen doesn't get it at first. He's like, if he had obeyed, it would have been different. And Grand's like, no, if he obeyed, nobody would know him because everybody would be wiped out.
What I like is it shows that like Gran isn't just telling Spensa's stories. Like she's telling Spensa the stories she needs to hear.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because like she changes her stories based on who's listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's her way of passing on advice. And like it's a pretty good way of doing it as well.
Yeah.
It's the Hoyd storyteller way of doing it. But I think Gran's a little more helpful.
Actually Hoyd. Okay, I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
So Jorgen goes to bake bread with Gran because Cobb makes a comment that he knows a woman who bakes really good pies. Do you guys think that Cobb and Gran got together? Because I totally got that vibe.
See,
Cobb's too young for Gran.
Yes. It's like I forgot how old Cobb was for a good while. And like in the Skyward Flight novellas, is there like a couple thing going on? And now like rereading this book, I'm like, no, like they're like an entire generation apart. Like he's only a few years older than her son. Like, the Nightshade. Like this should not be a relationship.
Look, I still ship it.
I have such difficulty saying anything with confidence because you've been so hard on that theory for so long that I think it's reality. And so I'm just like, I don't know. I thought that was more explicit in the later books, right? Like, wasn't that a thing? But like, maybe that's not a thing. So
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's just that she made pie and her son brought home his wingmate at one point.
That does make more sense. That's for like, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cobb does mention earlier in the book to Spensa about her grandmother like baking pies.
Yeah.
Apparently she just makes really great pies, which I mean,
she's very good with the bread and stuff. It makes sense. I mean,
yeah.
Putting those Cytonic powers to good use.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, she can see even though she's blind because of the Cytonic powers. So
yeah, that's not makes sense.
Yeah. That's not like a fantasy cliche or anything.
Well, when you put it that way, I mean, yeah, it I did like the interludes. I still think like it definitely worked on a reread, knowing what I know of later books. I remember reading Starsight. I'm like, I need more of this, please. But like the interludes were good. I do still think it was a little weird that Jorgen was not at all present for the battle at Detritus at all, and like Spensa and Jorgen didn't reunite. But like of all the dramatic things that happened in the ending, Jorgen going in the caves to have a plot reveal is, I mean, it's fine, I guess, but okay.
At the same time, it would be distracting to have scene between Jorgen and Spensa in the middle of that fight, and you know that they totally would have had like a moment, and it would have broken up the tension and
make that battle longer. I need more stuff between Skyward Flight and Spensa and things there. That's what I need. But like it did work. Oh, it worked fine on a reread. Like it did, but it's just kind of funny how it worked out. And admittedly, you do really need the slugs for Skyward Flight to work because that's what it's about.
Yeah.
So
like I think it was necessary with Spensa going into the nowhere, like to give the audience hope for Detritus. It's like, okay, like don't worry about them. Like they have hyperdrives now.
Yeah. That's very true.
I did really enjoy the epilogue with like Ned Arturo and Jorgen looking for the slugs, because I think it just showed like a really good look at the relationship between the three of them, because of course they've been friends since before flight school, and Ned and Arturo are just like, what the hell is going on with Jorgen? He never acts like this. There's clearly a battle going on. Why are we down here? Why do you think Spencer is a good role model? Don't do what Spencer would do. Don't follow that. That's really bad advice. And it was just really funny to me because like they clearly have such a good relationship that they know Jorgen's acting out of sorts.
And usually I think Jorgen would be the one that's like, hey guys, like I'm putting you back on the rails. And so it's that reversal. Yeah.
Normally Jorgen's the one putting people on the rails. Speaking of Jorgen, Spensa and Jorgen, guys.
Yeah.
It happens in this book. Very, very briefly, but it still happens.
And
I was very pleased by this.
Yeah. Book 1 sets up the potential for their relationship. It never becomes a thing. Like they're not in a relationship in Skyward. And then all of a sudden at the beginning of this book, they're in a relationship, basically.
Well, they're not. They're still like in that flirting around each other stage. Because there's a couple of mentions before Alan crashes, which I really enjoyed. That's some of my favorite type of like romance stuff. But yeah, then like the sudden kiss it was very sudden. It's like, okay, cool. I guess now we are in a relationship, but
we have to do it now.
I'm looking forward to Defiant to see how it actually pulls together. Because yeah, like they're not really in a relationship, and if they are, they have been in one for what, like 30 seconds?
They've had some visions in Cytonic. It's good. It's solid.
Yeah.
They're solid.
Oh yeah, she sees him in the bathroom, half naked.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then and then pranks him by going to take off her own jumpsuit.
They're good. They're solid.
Like, I guess it just felt abrupt to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it kind of has to be, because when are they going to see each other again?
That's exactly the thing. It has
like,
been 6
Brandon
months.
needed to sneak that in so that they can be in a relationship later.
Yeah. Exactly. It definitely would have been worse if they had none of that through Starsight and Cytonic. That would be bad.
Yeah, I think if it was all left until after Cytonic, before like they actually got into a relationship, then it would just feel really rushed and squished.
Yeah. So better to rush it now and gloss over it.
Yeah. We'll start it, put it on pause, and come back to it.
Yeah, because like at least they have this 6-month time skip to as a smokescreen.
Yep.
Any other characters that we want to talk about, or?
I have a character I wish to bring up because I always find this so funny.
Okay.
In the scene where Spencer and all of that, and everyone's like watching what happened with the Delver, and she sees herself come
in detritus,
out, and like at the very beginning, and there's all the eyes and stuff, and like some people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. I can't see anything. And I think Jorgen says something about like, yeah, there's like lights in the screen, and there's some random tech who has a single line who's like, yeah, I can see lights or something. I actually looked it up because I wanted to get the quote. So the quote goes, "You don't see it?" I asked, looking around at the others and their confused expressions. "The darkness?" Jorgen asked. "There's a man on the screen, the one who is making the log. Then there's a blackness behind him, broken by white lights. Like eyes," one of the texts said. It's just like a random unnamed tech. It's just this Cytonic in the background. Anyway, I've always loved that and love pointing it out to people.
That's fantastic.
I mean, like they say, like humans produce a lot of Cytonics.
Yeah.
Yep.
I actually like the fact that there's more Cytonics on detritus than what we actually see, and there's the potential for them to not even know what it is that they're looking for, and so there's sleeper agents, if you will.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's more Cytonics than even they are aware of.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Any final thoughts?
No. That's good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for watching. You can find us at 17thshard.com for all the news, discussion, theories, and fun you could ever want. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud. You can leave us a review on iTunes. You can subscribe on YouTube. And you can support us also on Patreon. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.